one of the difficulties we face as we practice the Buddhist path of meditation is that our background, our character, we've been conditioned to want things, seek things out, and without realizing, build up a lot of craving and attachment in the way we think, the way we react to the world. So when we begin meditation, that comes with us. We probably all know what it's like meditating and wanting peace and wanting to attain samadhi, wanting knowledge, insight, wanting to be different, or things to be different, wanting our mind to be different, and so on. So that will already set up a tension, because if you want something and you don't get it, then you tend to fall into discontent quite quickly. And we also will express that. We judge our meditation and judge ourselves and say, I'm no good at meditation. Maybe end up feeling disappointed or depressed. So we have this phrase we use a lot. We're meditating just to see the way things are. To know the way things are. And to do that, we have to set aside a lot of the mind that is wanting and desiring. We also have to get to know the difference between skillful desire and the unskillful desire of craving and wanting. It's when we have faith in the Buddha that motivates us to listen to the Dhamma, want to practice the Dhamma. So you can say that's another kind of desire, it's wanting. But we have to make sure that craving doesn't take over or hijack that desire to practice. So we need insight, wisdom, wise reflection to come back and look and know what's motivating us during our meditation and any aspect of the practice we're doing. You'll notice if you do practice mindfulness directed to the breathing, for example, the more mindful of the breath you are, the less desire and wanting is coming into the mind, and it's just knowing the breath. And all the other mental activity we're normally caught up in fades away. It's less important. Of course, things still come up into our awareness as we're meditating, both pleasant and unpleasant. But we're giving less importance to all those memories and perceptions and thoughts because we're just knowing the breath. Another problem that often arises is boredom, because the breath is not very stimulating or exciting. Even when we are more mindful of it, if thoughts and emotions are fading out, we're letting them go. We can even find peace boring. A very common reaction at that point is to say, what next? What do I do now? Maybe we doubt there must be more than this. So again, we need some wise reflection to guide us, remind us what we're doing, why. When the mind is calm and you feel steady, stable, with mindfulness present, well then you can contemplate. And maybe it's been calm for a while, perhaps sometimes goes in very deep, very still. And then the mind emerges from that. Then contemplate your experience of body and mind. Contemplating means, you might say, following along with mindfulness and observing the way things are. You don't have to create anything. You're just aiming to know the way things are. And the stillness and the mindfulness will help your observation to be more clear, less deluded. So you may even have an unpleasant thought or memory coming up. But because you're mindful, you can see it. And you don't let it take over the mind and create a lot of negative thinking. You just know it. And that's your aim, to know things, to know the body, the sensations of the body, and what the body is made up of, and to know the mind. So wise reflection also involves some analyzing or looking into what is what. So if you have a negative thought arising, or knowing, oh, this is unskillful, unwholesome thought, and to quickly find a way to drop it. When we're not so mindful, we tend to cling on to things, defend our position, as it were. You maybe have a negative thought and you get caught into the reasons why, and you believe it. Maybe it seems correct. And that just feeds more discontent. But mindfulness is more equanimous. When you're mindful, you're equanimous. So you can see the nature of greed, anger, delusion as defiling, meaning taking away the peace of mind, causing mental agitation, causing trains of thought that are not peaceful. You can see that, you can observe that, meaning you can observe the way things are. And then you want to let go, relinquish them, because you can see them as suffering and the cause of suffering. But you still have to develop some understanding how to do that, how to let go sometimes. Because many of these defilements are habitual. And we quickly get stuck into them, old habits. Luang Por Chah encouraged us to develop wisdom and understanding by contemplating the body. That may not seem immediately obvious. Why contemplate the body if you're experiencing some ill will or doubt, or you have some desire for something bothering your mind? Why go to the body? Well, it's an exercise in just observing the truth with mindfulness and cultivating insight. Just as a Buddhist monk is taught when they're ordained to contemplate the hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin. And they go on to contemplate the 32 parts of the body. First of all, you have to be mindful to do that. You have to be paying attention. And then it's an exercise in training the mind to look back at what you have here, this body. 99% of the time we don't do that with the eye of Dhamma or mindfulness and insight. Of course, everybody knows they have a body. But our conditioned view is that this body is me, mine, myself. So when you investigate the body with wisdom and mindfulness, you're asking a question, is it me, mine, myself? And you're looking at the different component parts of the body, the 32 parts, the 4 elements. And you're asking the question, where is the self in this? It may not immediately be obvious, but the more you investigate like this, you realize that the majority of our attachment, certainly the coarse, you might say normal kinds of attachment we have, stem from our attachment to the body. All our possessions stem from our attachment to the body. As human beings, we strive to have a house. Our ideal is to buy our own house, very least to rent one. If you don't have a house, you're homeless. It's considered great suffering, and it is. But that house we aspire to is for this body. Keep it protected, comfortable. All our material wealth that we seek is based around this body and the idea of a self in the body. And we just take that for granted, it's just normal. But when you direct mindfulness and insight to look at the body more closely, you are dispelling or breaking up some of that idea of the body as a self. So if you go through the 32 parts, the Buddha said, ask the question, where is the self in the hair, the nails, the teeth, the skin? What happens to hair, nails, teeth, skin over time? They age. They drop out. We're constantly cutting and losing hair and teeth and nails. He said, really look at that with mindfulness. And you come to see that the body is an impermanent condition. Who knows? Well, the mind knows, and this is the mind you're training. in mindfulness and wisdom. Training to look back first at the body and then at itself, the mind watching itself, because the mind is the same. Every thought that comes into the mind is impermanent. It arises, it's there, and then it passes away. Every feeling, pleasure, displeasure, arises, passes away. Wherever you look in this body and mind, what we call the five khandhas, impermanence is there to be seen. And what's impermanent, you can't take as a permanent, lasting self, something that just exists on its own. Your thought doesn't just exist. It's not a self. It comes up because of different causes and conditions. We say karma, past karma. Feelings arise. We see something pleasant. That's our good karma coming up. We see something unpleasant, ugly. Some of our negative karma coming back gives rise to an unpleasant feeling. But there's no self in that. But that's what we have to investigate. Because our normal delusion is, yeah, there's a self, that's me. I'm happy because I see what I like. I'm unhappy because I don't see what I like. All our senses are giving us pleasure and pain. To observe that, we need the mindfulness, and then we need to train to investigate with wisdom. If you go back to the body and just keep training in looking at each part of the body, each aspect of the physical body, you get used to separating things, analysing, looking at the component parts, the four elements. It becomes clearer and clearer that there's nothing permanent or stable or that you can call a self in that. And what happens? The body gets older every day. The changes are subtle, but over time you can't ignore them. And with the change you get some pain and discomfort, you get some illness, degeneration, and eventually we have to face the end, death. So clearly the physical body is not a self that lasts or is permanent. And yet the mind treats it that way when we haven't done this investigation, we haven't practiced mindfulness. In the Buddhist path we say somebody who's gained insight, truly understands the truth, the way things are, and they've seen that the body is as if dead all the time. They see the death or the impermanence in the body all the time. They're no longer deluded by that. So then fear of death, fear of illness fades from their experience. Greed and attachment also fades. If you know something is impermanent, you don't try clinging onto it very tightly because you know it's impermanent. It's impossible to have it forever, keep it forever, make it do what you want. So the noble ones, they already know that this body is going to die all the time. As the Buddha said, every breath in, every breath out. They're not deluded. So then there's no need to go and act in ways that come from the kilesas, like act in ways of greed to get some small pleasure, temporary pleasure, maybe at the expense of someone else, and hurt someone else, make negative karma. They don't do that anymore because it's not worth it, it's not correct, and it's just harming oneself. So they don't break precepts. Those intentions don't arise in the mind. What's the point? If this body is already seen as impermanent, as ultimately it's going to die, then you wouldn't need to go and fight or kill somebody else. You wouldn't need to go and steal something from somebody else. Those intentions, say, to break precepts, are seen as the cause of suffering very clearly. It's very obvious. So then the noble ones, they don't follow them anymore. They don't come up, they don't give them any importance. They just disappear. So they say the noble ones no longer have rebirth in the lower realms. Rebirth in the lower realm is through making strong negative karma, maybe repeated negative karma, breaking the precepts, hurting others, hurting oneself, according to wrong views, wrong action, wrong speech. They don't do that anymore. Because they know it just leads to more suffering. If you know that, you don't do it. The reason we still break precepts is because we don't yet know fully. We may suspect, we may think it's likely that we're harming ourselves, but maybe we can't stop ourselves. But the noble ones, they've stopped. It's just so clear, their mind is seeing the way things are, that they act in accordance with Dhamma. They don't kill, steal, commit acts of sexual misconduct, don't tell lies, don't get drunk. They just know that is harming themselves and may lead them to harm others. And they have no doubt about Nibbana. They have no doubt that Nibbana is true. They've had a glimpse of it, whether it's a stream enterer or any other level, right up to Arahant. There's no more doubt. So then they'll only do things that support them to realize Nibbana. When the mind is peaceful, we turn back to look at the body. And we realize, this body is subject to old age, sickness, death. Everything is getting worn out, little by little. So it wakes you up to the truth, brings your mind to see the truth. And there's a letting go, relinquishment of attachment. And you get peace from that. And that's the reason why we practice. People think it sounds a very depressing idea, just knowing that your body is impermanent, one day it will die. The whole point is it brings peace to the mind, because the mind is no longer lost in greed, anger, fear, delusion. And the noble ones, they don't fear death. Because they know that's just the way things are. You get old and then you die. You get sick and then you die. the joke is the noble ones fear rebirth. They don't really fear it, but they don't want rebirth, they want Nibbana. And one who's seen Nibbana, truly seen it, they have the comfort or the peace of mind that there's a maximum 7 more births, 7 more lifetimes. This is the purpose of the Buddhist path, is to reduce the amount of rebirth down to no more birth. That's how the Buddha declares his completion of practice. No more birth for me. Where does birth come from? It comes from craving and attachment, following greed, anger and delusion. Still treating the body as a self, so seeking pleasure with the body, fearing pain, having aversion to pain. And then all the mental states that come up based on that, attaching to them as self. Happiness, sadness, anger, worry, excitement, boredom. All the mental states we're familiar with because we meditate. We know them, but we don't yet really know them because we're still prey to them, we still get caught into them. But the noble ones recognize them as just the causes of suffering, so they don't want to follow them anymore. They let them go, they practice letting go all the time. The noble ones, they don't hold grudges. What's the point? It's just suffering. Even if somebody else has hurt the noble one, abused them, criticized them, taken advantage of them, tried to physically kill them even. The noble one knows to hold on to anger, form a grudge, and to seek to get back at that person is suffering, just creating more suffering for oneself. They see the way things are, they know that, they're clear enough. They don't doubt it. There's no more kind of, well, this one guy I'm going to get. After that, I will give up all my grudges. They just give up grudges immediately. They don't let them take root in the mind, like weeds in the garden. They don't let them stay there because they know it's suffering. They don't form greed over their possessions, their family, their wealth, any kind of status and power they have from the world. They don't get lost in that with greed and attachment, because they know that greed and attachment will make them suffer. That's why the noble ones are not too excited about all the wealth and all the kind of pleasures and entertainments and amazing things that the world can give you, because they know they're all impermanent and not self. So they don't crave them anymore, they don't seek after them. They're just that much, it's just another condition of the world. A sankhara, and we know as we chant every day, sabbe sankhara anicca. All conditions are impermanent. That includes fame, fortune, wealth, power, status, as well as suffering, unhappiness. Both sides of the coin, they're both sankharas, they're both impermanent, not self, not to be clung to as self. Doesn't mean to say the noble ones don't have any pleasure or pain, or they may even attain certain things, wealth and status. If the causes and conditions are there, it may happen. The noble ones still have people like them and still have people that dislike them, but they don't cling to these experiences as self, and they don't seek them out as ends in themselves, because they know everything is impermanent. And if you can see the impermanence in your own body, you know one day you'll get old, get sick and die. Then anything, any pleasure, any success will also get old and get sick and die with you. You can't take it with you. However much they stuff in the coffin, as human beings like to do, to kind of get a bit of comfort, I guess, for the living, because the dead person doesn't know about it. Sometimes the dead person's in the coffin and they fill the coffin full of money, miniature cars, houses, dolls' houses, nice clothes, jewellery. Nowadays they have to have the mobile phone, so they want to take it with them to the next life. But it's also the living, isn't it? That's what the living, the relatives will want for themselves. And they reflect that in what they put in the coffin for the dead one. I even knew of a funeral where they put an iPhone into the coffin because they wanted the person to have an iPhone in the next life. And before the funeral was completed, a new iPhone had come out, so they had to quickly change to the latest iPhone. Get that in the coffin before it was cremated or buried. That's what human beings do. We keep running around after things that are impermanent. Stirs up greed, stirs up worry, stirs up anguish. You have to compete with other people, so we have all these conflicts in the world, economic conflicts, wars, over stuff that is impermanent, not self. And at the same time we make a lot of karma, so next life maybe isn't as good as this one. And the noble ones, they never forget who's helped them. They know that they rely on the wisdom and goodness of the Buddha. Because if there was no Buddha, we wouldn't know this path of practice. So the more insight into, say, impermanence, not self, that one has, the more gratitude and appreciation for the Buddha comes up in the mind. Gratitude and appreciation for those who help us, not just the Buddha, but parents, lay people, if you're a monk, or family and friends, if you're a lay person. And that's another reflection, isn't it? Cause and effect. You can't come to hear the Dhamma without the help of others. You can't practice the Dhamma without the help of others. So as we practice, we can keep bringing up the mindfulness, reflect, just find something that works for you to help you let go of whatever your mind is sticking to. Whatever fills your mind, whatever aspect of greed, anger, delusion, question it. Ask yourself, is this thought that I'm holding on to, is this view, this belief correct? Is it leading to suffering or is it leading to happiness? It's another way of developing wisdom, isn't it? Get to know your own mind. Use the mind with mindfulness to see the mind, see itself, turn back on itself. It's a very rare opportunity to do this. We have the support, say on a retreat, we have everything laid on. We've got the place, the food, the conditions, the time. Try and find a way to develop some insight into your own mind. Develop some good habits that you can take with you even after the retreat. Try and see through some of all that endless mental chatter that causes us so much irritation and confusion. So for the rest of this period we can meditate till you hear the sound of the bell.